Hello, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel, or if it's your first time, welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be doing my April wrap-up, and I did do a mid-month check-in. I also did a mid-month check-in video. I will link that down below in the description box and also at the end of this video. Now that April is over and I'm looking back, I just had a really good reading month in April. I really lucked out. I didn't have any books I didn't like, which is pretty impressive. If I had it my way, every book I read would be a 5-star read. Life is short. I want to enjoy as much of my life as I can. And yeah, I would love to have every book be 5-star. And this month, I got pretty close to that. I would say there was a little bit of a theme this month with my reading, and that would be the books that I read were either they were entertaining, they were thought-provoking, they were healing, or there seemed to be a underlying message of communication for me, which I take to be that maybe I need to improve my communication skills. The first book I want to talk to you about is Enduring Love by Ian McEwan. This was part of the Thrill-a-Month book club that I'm in, and I'll put the information to that down in the description box as well. I really didn't know what I was going to be getting myself into when I opened up this book. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the writing of this book. When I picked it up, I had just had the absolute week from hell at work, and I picked it up on a Friday night. I had a hard time putting it down, and it was just a wonderful escape. It's about Joe and Clarissa, a married couple who go on a picnic, and there's this accident with a balloon. And Joe, without really thinking, just runs and tries to help. Somebody gets gravely injured in this situation where everybody's trying to save this little boy and this hot air balloon. Joe goes to make sure that this guy didn't survive. And when he goes to check on this guy, another person that was there follows him and starts asking him to pray with him. And he says, I'm really not into that. I'm not somebody that prays. I'd really rather not do that. And he keeps pushing it, and then he gets really upset at him because he doesn't want to pray with him, and it gets to the point of being creepy. So he goes home with his wife, and they're just like any time. I'm sure everybody's had this happen at some point in their life where maybe you see an accident on the road or something, and like you can't stop thinking about it or talking about it for a couple of days. So that happens with him and his wife. They're telling all their friends about it and everything. And this guy, Jed, the one that had asked him to pray with him, he starts calling him and telling him that he's in love with him. He starts talking to his wife, Clarissa, about what's going on. At first he thinks, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I'm not even going to say anything. And then he starts talking to her about it, and she kind of makes fun of him and doesn't really believe him. And then she starts blaming him, and then it just kind of swirls into this crazy hurricane of miscommunication and distrust. And it really kind of opened my eyes to how important communication is in relationships, how easily it can spiral into something else. Just that one moment when maybe you hold back saying something that maybe you need to say, or maybe you say something you shouldn't say. And for me, that was an underlying theme of this book the whole way through, was the communication, how he was communicating with everyone around him and how they were communicating with him. And I mean Joe, the protagonist, and the reaction he was getting, or the reaction he was giving to what was being said. I did not like the end of this book, really at all. I like things to be wrapped up, and I like a nice bow on the top, right? It wasn't wrapped up. It was kind of left open, and I started thinking maybe that's how the author wanted it. I was originally going to give it 4 stars because the ending irritated me so much. Just a couple different things that happened too at the end. I just thought, what? But I really do think that's how the author intended it. And I just loved this book so much. I really want to reread it. There's a movie of it, and I really want to watch it, by the way. And because I loved it so much and it really meant something to me in certain ways, and I can't wait to reread it, I decided to bump it up to a 5-star book. The next book that I read was my Book of the Month selection. It's Like a Sister by Kelly Garrett. In this book, a lady named Lena finds out on Instagram that her sister is dead. Her sister had an overdose in a park in New York City. And she hasn't talked to her sister in a while. They're estranged. So she goes to check out what happened. And she just doesn't really believe that her sister killed herself. And so she starts looking into what happened to her sister. And like most people, when something happens to a loved one, she doesn't feel like the cops are really putting a whole lot of attention to it. So she decides to take matters into her own hands and try to figure out what happened to her sister. If foul play was involved, she wants to know who did it. This book picks up right as she finds out that her sister died. And I love that. I love it when books just bounce right into it. They don't mess around. There's not all that telling of the past before they tell what happened now or anything like that. She just got right into the story. And then while the story was going along, told us about the past. I really got attached to Lena. I feel like her and I could be friends. I feel like we had some things in common that just made me really wish that she was a real person that I could talk to and be friends with. Lena and I both have successful dads. We both feel very removed from our fathers. Our fathers both have a new family with a new child who is their entire world and their favorite. And that is exactly, like, it's crazy how similar the father-daughter dynamic in this book is to me in real life. So I found the family dynamic of this book to be very moving and heartfelt. Her sister Desiree in the book has addiction issues, and she really struggled with that, and that's part of why they stopped talking. It just really, really grabbed me by the heart, and I just loved this character. I loved how witty and honest and funny she is. It's just so relevant, this story and the world that the author created. And what I mean by that is so many authors kind of like to pretend that the world is different than it really is. And I feel like this author portrayed America in 2022 very accurately. Her characters were very human and flawed. I was guessing what was going on for most of the book. There was some twists and turns there that I didn't see coming. It was very juicy. And I found the book very healing somehow. And I didn't think walking into a murder mystery that I was going to get some healing out of it, but I did. I love her writing. And I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. The humidity had followed me to the subway platform like a stalker, clinging in ways my favorite black t-shirt never did. Right? Like, she's got this way of describing things and this sarcasm that I'm here for it. I loved the author's writing. I loved this book. I'm a little bit irritated because nobody has ever told me about Kelly Garrett. I thought, oh, okay, this was a great book. This must be her first book because I've never heard of her. No, this is not her first book. I feel like people have been holding out on me. This is her third book. So don't you know, I'm going to go get the other 2 books and read them because I love when I find a new author that I absolutely adore. I love going and getting the backlist books in their repertoire. And I definitely recommend this if you love good murder mysteries. The next book I want to talk to you about is Farewell, My Lovely by Raymond Chandler. This is another mystery. It's about a PI named Philip Marlowe. And Philip Marlowe, I feel, is the quintessential private eye. He is probably who most private eyes are somewhat based on. It kind of had, in some ways, a Chinatown or maybe even a light Sin City feel to it. I wanted to read you an excerpt from this book too, to give you an idea of what I'm talking about with feeling like so many private eyes have been based off of this character. She poured a fat slug of mellow-looking scotch into my glass and squirted in some fuzz water. It was the kind of liquor you think you can drink forever, and all you do is get reckless. She gave herself the same treatment. It just has that feel to it, that mysterious kind of sexy feel to it. One thing I found very interesting about this book is the author really didn't give me any personal information about any of the characters, about their background, about who they are as people. And you know me, I like to know, how does somebody like their coffee? Do they like coffee? I want to know everything about a character. I didn't get that in this book, but I still really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good, solid storyline. I mean, the storyline was amazing. The protagonist has a very dry sense of humor. The book is filled with metaphors, and I found that to make the book more enjoyable to read. I found it to be a lot more fun and funny that way. This book was written in the 1940s, so the world was very different back then. The way that people looked at each other, the way people talked about each other was very different. So it's definitely a look into history and how different the world was back then. Some of it was uncomfortable, and some of it was amusing, and some of it was nostalgic. As I've mentioned before, I love the Sue Grafton Alphabet series. It's my favorite series of all time. And so I think maybe I just have an attachment to private investigators. I think that's just kind of my thing. I don't know that I enjoy reading about detectives anywhere near as much as I do a private eye. Probably because private eyes break the rules a little bit more, and their safety seems to be in jeopardy quite a bit more than cops. And, well, I don't really trust cops. So I guess I feel a little bit more comfortable with private eyes. The ending of this book was perfect. This ending did wrap it up and put a bow on the top for me. And I thought it was the perfect ending. I didn't see what was coming when it came, if that makes sense. And usually I know what's going on pretty quickly in a book. It was just very amusing and enjoyable. I really loved this book, and I want to read more of Raymond Chandler's writing. This also was made into a movie. I started it, but I fell asleep, so I don't know what I think of the movie yet, but the beginning of it at least was really good. I give this one 5 stars also. Also, thank you so much to my friend Glenn. He sent me this book. He thought that I would enjoy it, and Glenn, you were right. I absolutely love this book. Okay, there's 2 more books still that I want to talk to you about, and they were both audiobooks. I like to listen to an audiobook also. It just, to me, it's nice when I'm cleaning or doing the dishes or whatever to be able to listen to an audiobook. So my notes are on my phone. So I'll be looking down a lot when I read these to you. Okay, the next one I want to tell you about is Open Book by Jessica Simpson. I didn't know what to think going into this. I watched Newlyweds. I can't remember what night it was on, but I would actually go watch it live every week when it was on. I loved it that much. I even have the DVDs. That's how much I thought it was. I thought it was so great. And Jessica actually wrote this book herself, which I find very impressive. Very few celebrities do that, right? They have somebody else write the book about them. And I think So many people, especially celebrities, when they write a memoir or they have someone else write it for them, they want to portray themselves in a certain light. I mean, I guess that's kind of natural to want people to think the best of you. Jessica, however, doesn't seem to really care what people think of her. She's very honest, and she talks about things that she's done that she's not proud of. I did feel like she's my friend after reading the book. She's just so forthright and vulnerable in a way that is very beautiful. And one of the things that I thought was so beautiful about her was her ability to forgive people. She is able to be hurt by someone and still have good memories about them and forgive them and move on, which I find very refreshing and new. I don't know that I've experienced a lot of that in my life, and I found it very healing because of that. I don't feel comfortable rating someone's life. Like, how can I do that? It's their life. It's the life they've lived. So there's certain things that maybe I didn't care for, or the storyline of her life maybe didn't quite match what I would want it to in a regular book, but it's her life, so I can't really rate the storyline the way I normally would. What I can rate is her writing ability and whether or not I feel that she was honest and vulnerable. And to me, she definitely achieved that. She's very raw in the book. She really goes deep into the life lessons that she has learned. And I just thought it was a very beautiful book. I loved this one too. Another 5-star read. The last book that I read or listened to was The Seep by Hannah Porter. Is that not a beautiful cover? Right? It's about a woman named Trina and her wife, Deba. The world has been, I guess you would say, taken over by an alien entity called the Seep. And it's very hard to explain this Seep. The Seep is something that people get high on, and while they're high and open to this Seep, it's kind of invading their brains and sucking information out of them, trying to understand people. And it wants people to get addicted to it, I think, because it gives people what they want. So people can become whatever they want. And what I mean by that is there's people in the book that maybe have a unicorn horn or have cat claws, or people are able to just have the world they want in ways that we can't. So I guess if you were to just take a moment to imagine having a life with no stress, no problems, your house is always clean and everything around it is perfect and beautiful. But at what cost? Well, that was immediately what I was thinking about. At what cost? This is a very philosophical book, by the way. It had me thinking about, well, what would that mean, having everything I want? So then in the book, her wife decides that she wants to die and be reborn as a baby so that she can now live a life with no pain. She doesn't have to remember all these terrible things that happened in her past. And so she decides to do that. The world around her starts feeling like this fake, perfect cult. Like everyone is sheep and they're just obeying and following and doing what the Seep wants them to. And it gets pretty creepy pretty quick, kind of like Stepford Wives or something. My next thought in this book is, well, maybe we really aren't supposed to have it all. Maybe we're supposed to always want to achieve more, do more, experience more, live more, that kind of thing. I think if I personally had the face, the body, the house, the car, the career that I wanted, and had absolutely no money problems and everything was perfect, I'd get bored so quick. I don't know that I'd want that life. I mean, it sounds nice, but to me, that's not really what I want. So maybe we're not supposed to fit in with everybody. Maybe we're not supposed to be loved by everyone. Maybe it's okay to have our own opinions and not just immediately agree with everything that some entity tells us to, which of course then I started really thinking about politics. And maybe it's okay to have preferences as to how we live. That was another thing, is in the book, there was certain ways that people are supposed to live, and she wasn't obeying, and she was getting in trouble for it. So it's really eerie, like a nightmare, where it felt like, have you ever had that nightmare where you're the only one that sees something and nobody else does, and it's so haunting? It's like she's the only one not being a sheep, and the only one missing the past, missing the way the world used to be. So basically the book was really about her grief of losing her wife and her grief over missing the past, which I understand that really well, because I still kind of am in denial that the 80s and 90s are not coming back. Now, this book was really, really open for the reader's interpretation of what it meant and even what happened. It's also open to the reader's interpretation of what a world like this would mean. Some people might love the thought of this. I love the creativity of it, the opening the door to even think about these kind of things. It got me thinking about, what is the human condition? What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Why am I here? Why are you here? What is the meaning of my life, and what is the meaning of yours? And do they have to be the same? I don't think so. But some people think that the meaning of everybody's life should be the same thing. And I don't agree. But some people loved this book and some people hated it. After I read it, I was just curious what other people thought. I didn't see a lot of in the middle opinions. It seemed like people loved it or hated it. I really enjoyed feeling like those doors of my creativity were being opened, and that I was just taken down this fun journey of figuring out what I think about different things, or maybe realizing I don't have an opinion about certain things. So I give this book 4 stars. I definitely want to read it again. I might get the physical copy to read next time, because I think there's some things in there that I would like to underline or highlight and take notes on. But let me know if you've read any of these, and if you did, what you thought of them. Or, as always, I want to know if I've inspired you to want to read any of these, and if so, which ones. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day or night. Happy reading. Bye.